Hey everyone, this is Jesse from North Korean Movie Reviews here with a breakdown video regarding the recent military parade that was done in celebration of the Workers' Party of Korea, the 75th anniversary of the foundation of the Workers' Party of Korea. I'm going to be going kind of off the script here as I'm sort of going to be recording my thoughts as the parade goes on, so I do apologize in advance for the sort of guerrilla linguistics that you may or may not encounter. So, this parade broke several conventions concerning military parades in the country and featured a whole host of brand new military gadgets and hardware, on top of a very rare, heartfelt speech by Kim Jong un. So, in this video, I'm going to try to explain the context around this event, as well as analyzing the new military hardware displayed, and just kind of tell whether or not these new machines pose any real threat to the current status quo on the Korean Peninsula. So for context, this parade was organized to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Workers' Party of Korea, which, as you know, is the ruling political party in North Korea. It's not the only party in North Korea, but it is the only one with any real power. This parade, this event, comes at a very crucial time in North Korea, as you know, the whole world's basically been frozen by the COVID-19 epidemic. Crippling sanctions continue to stagnate the North Korean economy, and on top of the fact that we are now, God, less than 3 weeks away from the United States presidential elections, which, for all intents and purposes, will determine the future of the continued talks with the North Korean government. Without getting too far into American politics, it doesn't seem too likely that Joe Biden would continue the current dialogue with North Korea. So I feel like the North Koreans are banking heavily on Donald Trump being reelected. So for the video I have, it begins with a heartfelt speech by Kim Jong un, and this speech was very, very different. I mean, this whole parade was very different. So basically, you have Kim Jong un not dressed in his traditional Asian attire like his father and grandfather did. He's dressing in a very modest gray suit, and I've heard people say that he's trying to rely on a sort of man of the people persona. And yeah, what he's doing is he's definitely banking on people associating him with his grandfather, Kim Il sung. He's definitely trying to portray himself as the grandson of Kim Il sung. As we know, Kim Jong il, when he came to power, uh, didn't really interact with his citizens as much as his father did. So, and I really think Kim Jong Un is trying to change that by not only getting rid of the Songun policy, at least not officially, but in practice, by ridding the Songun policy and reinvesting his country's limited budget back into domestic affairs such as infrastructure and conventional military forces. And so, anyways, with this speech, we see Kim Jong un not only shedding tears, but we see him apologizing and more or less blaming himself for failing to deliver on the economic promises that he had promised to the North Korean people. So as we know, as Kim Jong-un ascended to power, one of the promises that he made is he was going to bring more economic prosperity to North Korea, something that his father thoroughly failed to do. And in this speech, we see that Kim Jong-un is acknowledging the fact that his plans of bringing more trade and as well as, rebuilding North Korean infrastructure and building new homes, things like that he has not met his initial goals, again, due to crippling sanctions. And in the speech, while he does mention foreign sanctions as being one of the reasons why he wasn't able to meet those goals, he also avoids outright saying it's from the United States. So what I think he's trying to do here is he's trying to play it safe on both sides. He's not trying to actively call out the United States. He knows it's a crucial time in both his country as well as the United States politically. And really, what I think Kim Jong un wants to achieve with this demonstration diplomatically with the United States is He's is basically saying, look, your sanctions have failed. Despite everything that you have tried to do to weaken our regime, we're as strong as we've ever been. Not only do we have a capable nuclear deterrent that can hit anywhere in the United States now, we also have a conventional modern military force that you're not just going to be able to, you know, destroy like you did, say, Saddam's army in 1991. So you're running out of time. We are willing to talk. We're willing to come to the table and make a deal. You have a choice in 3 weeks to choose between somebody who's actually willing to talk with us, or you can vote for the person who's just going to go back to the status quo of the past 40 years and not engage in diplomatic talks and only engage in further aggressions against North Korea, only pushing for more sanctions instead of dialogue. So that, if there's any political objective he wishes to achieve as far as international diplomacy goes, that's what I think it is. Internally, I think he's trying to portray not just to the North Korean people, but to also the political elite within North Korea, within his inner circle, whom he counts on for their support. He's trying to say, you know, yes, I've pretty much killed Songun, but my modernization programs have worked. We have modern infantry equipped with modern weapons, modern camouflage. We have brand new main battle tanks. We have sophisticated air defense systems, and we have a nuclear deterrence that is as powerful as it's ever been. So, in many ways, this parade is serving the purpose of solidifying Kim Jong Un's own power within the country. And I think it's more so about solidifying his own status as the de facto ruler of North Korea, more than it is trying to influence anybody outside of North Korea. So, without further ado, what I'm going to do from this point on is I'm going to go over the various new hardware that they've demonstrated. I'm going to talk a little bit about each system and what it's likely to do and what effect it could potentially have on the status quo. So the first thing that we see right away with these demonstrations is that the North Korean army has been significantly overhauled. We see troops wearing what are modernized camouflage patterns. No more of the antiquated Soviet uniforms they were wearing for the longest time. We see many of them are outfitted. Well, they're all outfitted with Kevlar vests, and their weapons appear to be AK-74Ms with a lot of features and gadgets on them, such as reflex sights as well as lights, foregrips, and whatnot. Also notably absent is there's a lot less goose stepping than you've seen in pretty much every other KPA parade. Now it's just more or less standard military marching. I was reading a report released by the South Korean military, and apparently the camouflage pattern that they're using is actually just a copy of the Granite B camouflage pattern, which is the standard camouflage used by the South Korean army. The only difference here is that it's a different color, but the pattern itself is identical. So yeah, we see several different KPA uniforms. We see standard woodland camouflage. We see some sort of it's very white. I don't know a whole lot about camouflage, but it's white, so I'm going to assume that that's sort of an urban camouflage pattern that they're trying to portray here. So definitely they're trying to send the message that, you know, we're no longer this cheap imitation of the Soviet Union in the 1970s. You know, we have our infantry is modern, it is well equipped, and we are capable. And also, I forgot to mention the actual designation of their AK-74s are called the Type 88. And we see some Type 88 ones that have the traditional side-folding stock, like it's a skeletonized side-folding stock, but not unlike something you would see on Russian AK-74s. And they have a unique variant that's sort of a top-folding variant, kind of like an AKMS, except the MP40 style folding stock collapses upwards over the dust cover, and it's called the Type 88-2 rifle. North Korea is the only country that I'm aware of that uses that employs a configuration such as that. But again, we also see their apparently it's like a 75 round drum of 545 by 39 millimeter that they employ on their Type 88 rifles. Whether or not that actually works, or is the drum magazines are notoriously unreliable. That's all I'm trying to say. So it's very interesting that they've stuck with those magazines and that they haven't discarded them for your standard 30 round box magazines. Here we see a few KPA soldiers outfitted in NBC equipment. NBC meaning nuclear, biological, and chemical, which is designed, of course, to protect them from those types of environments. Interestingly enough, we also see soldiers dressed in what appears to be riot gear, judging by the helmets. I'm not sure what, if any, military purpose there is for equipment like that. It could be that these are internal forces designed to suppress any type of uprising or rebellion within the country. So yeah, very interesting. We've certainly never seen that before. Standard Type 88 2 rifles with their 75 round drum magazines could be bodyguards. They could be security forces for high echelon Workers' Party members. Moving forward a little bit, we get to see some KPA pilots. The aircraft in question are MiG-29s. These appear to be first-generation MiG-29A Fulcrums, of which North Korea is believed to have anywhere from 30 to 50 airframes in service at any given time. They do also possess MiG-29C Fulcrums, which are easily distinguishable by their larger dorsal spine, but in this footage, I don't believe I see any. Now, these MiGs are, like I said, they're first-generation MiG-29A Fulcrums. They are not new by any standard. However, it does appear that they've been outfitted with... Oh, those are Su-25 Frogfoots, sort of a close air support aircraft. So we have MiG-29s and we have Su-25s. So the two most modern aircraft in the North Korean Air Force. So it appears they're outfitted with some type of LED mock-up, probably for a demonstration, a flyover, no doubt. Look at those RD-33 engines light up. God damn. MiG-29 is one handsome-looking aircraft. You can't deny that. So, yeah, almost looks like a Christmas demonstration, kind of. It's neat, though. Full afterburner. Top Gun Soviet Edition. So, yeah, more MiG-29A Fulcrums. They probably don't fly the C Fulcrums very often. Okay. I haven't seen... Okay, there go the SU... Nope, those are still MiG-29s. I saw a couple... there we go, those are the Su-25s. More MiG-29s. Flying in formation. Beautiful, beautiful aircraft. Combat record notwithstanding. Those are Su-25s. You can tell by the larger wingspan. And the straighter wings in general. Su-25s are, like I said, more of a... It's kind of like Russia's version of the A-10. Very close air support, ground attack roles. Here we see them launching flares. Flares are a sort of countermeasure used to fool infrared missiles, or heat-seeking missiles as they're popularly known as. Here, of course, they're just used as a sort of demonstration. Very, very beautiful flyover. Very, very nice. That's a great exhibition, to be honest. So moving on to some of the new military hardware that they're showcasing, here we have what looks to be some type of new guided missile system built off the chassis of a BTR-80, and we see that it contains 8 missile tubes. Now, we don't know anything about this yet. However, one expert who wrote an article for the Popular Mechanics said that this could be some type of NLOS system. Now, NLOS stands for non-line of sight. And what it is it's a type of missile that gets shot into the air, but instead of just going straight towards a target, what it does is these missiles will hover above the battlefield, and while they're doing this, they'll be streaming video back to the operator, who will then pick and choose what targets they want to hit. Once they've been given an order, the missiles will then descend on the chosen targets. Now, these type of missile systems have been used by both the Israelis and the South Koreans. So what the North Koreans could be doing is they're trying to match what the South Koreans have. And provided this technology works, it could be very, very devastating on an area such as the Korean DMZ, which is likely where these would be positioned. Moving on, we also see some more APCs that also look to be built off of BTRs, and these appear to have what appear to be versions of the Russian 9M133 Kornet anti-tank missile. And this is a highly mobile anti-armor system that could be used to quickly engage South Korean and American armor before retreating. We've seen similar systems in use by the Russian army, as well as most of the Eastern European military powers have similar systems. This is the first time we've seen something like this in the North Korean arsenal, however. Coming up next, we have what appears to be North Korea's version of the M1128 Striker, which is a highly mobile gun system, and it appears to have an internally operated electronic turret that sports some type of large caliber main gun. Could be 115 millimeter or an 85 millimeter. I'm not sure. I can't tell just by looking at it. Definitely part of North Korea's attempts to modernize its conventional forces. And a weapon like this would be very effective against hardened bunkers, infantry emplacements, and lightly armored vehicles like APCs, Bradleys, other types of infantry fighting vehicles. Probably not powerful enough to take out any main battle tank, realistically speaking. Coming up next is what, in my opinion, is the real star of this parade, which is the new North Korean main battle tanks that they have on display. I've seen a lot of people saying that these are T-14 Armadas, which, if you don't know, is the premier main battle tank that is just now rolling off of assembly lines in Russia. I can tell you all right off the bat, these are not T-14 Armadas. Dead giveaway, of course, is that the premier feature of the T-14 Armada is that it features an unmanned turret. And as you can clearly see here, these are manned turrets. You have the commander's hatch as well as the gunner's hatch on the back. We know absolutely nothing about these tanks. The front of the turret actually resembles an M1 Abrams more than it does a T-14 Armada. And interestingly enough, on the lower part of the turret front, we can see what appear to be these are hard kill systems that are used in tandem with its active protection system. From what we can tell from these tanks, it's clear that they were very heavily inspired by the T-14 Armada. I mean, just the chassis of the tank very much resembles a T-14 Armada. As far as armament goes, we see definitely this is a 125 millimeter 24A6 smoothbore gun. That is the standard gun used by the Russian armed forces as well as the Chinese, and most Eastern military powers use 125 millimeter guns. However, I still think that this is likely an older version of the 24A6, as you can tell on the right side of the turret, you see two anti-tank guided missile launchers. More modern versions of the 24A6 smoothbore gun can fire ATGM straight out of the barrel, so the fact that they have external ATGM launchers suggests that this is still an older version of the main gun. Going on to the turret top, we can see that they have not continued the practice of sticking as many useless weapon stations as humanly possible on the top of the turret, like they did with the Chonmaho, Pakpungho, and Songhunho. We just seem to have, on the front right of the turret, we have what appears to be the gunner's main sight. Behind him, we have what appears to be the commander's periscope. And to the left, I don't know what that is, but I don't know what that is. It could be another type of auxiliary sight. It could be ammunition box. We do see a machine gun right next to that gentleman, so that could be any number of things. But we do see that the tank sports modern explosive reactive armor. The tank features modern sensors. We have the auxiliary sight on the front left of the turret. It's likely that these two sensors, the gunner's sight and the commander's sight, are fully electronic, meaning they're no longer using the older Gen 1 night fighting equipment. They can probably actually see during nighttime without revealing themselves, as what would have been the case on their older models. As far as power plant is concerned, it's likely that this has the same 1500 horsepower diesel engine that the Songhunho had, so giving it a fairly decent power plant comparable to that of the initial M1 Abrams power plant, which used a Honeywell 1500 horsepower gas turbine engine. So all in all, this tank, whether or not we know so little about this tank at this point. We know nothing about its designation. We don't know anything about its internal systems or anything yet. But just from looking at it, you can already tell that this is at least a generation and a half ahead of anything that the North Koreans had been able to field before, as far as armor goes. This is definitely a huge step up from the Chonma hose and the Pakpung hose and the Sanggun hose. So this is definitely, in my opinion, the most interesting piece of military hardware that they have demonstrated thus far. And here we see a new type of SPG being fielded, SPG meaning a self-propelled gun. This is a fully enclosed design, likely fully electronic, operated entirely from the inside, as opposed to previous North Korean systems like the Koksan, which were operated externally, exposing the crew to small arms fire as well as shrapnel. I don't know if this is entirely new. We know nothing about the nomenclature or the designations of these vehicles so far. As far as the caliber of gun, it could vary anywhere from 122 millimeter D30 to 152 millimeter. Could even be a variation of the Koksan, which fired a 170 millimeter projectile. We see on the top of the turret, we have 2 automatic grenade launchers for anti-infantry use. And overall, I think this is made to compete with South Korea's SPGs, which are very popular on the export market and are considered to be among the best. North Korea is understandably trying to close the gap, so to speak, between self-propelled guns. Up next, we have what appears to be a new MLRS system, MLRS meaning Multiple Launch Rocket System, rocket artillery. As you don't need me to tell you, rocket-based artillery is sort of a staple of North Korean doctrine, and it's likely that this system here is intended to replace many of the older systems that North Korea has accumulated over its 70-year span. These systems would likely be set up further away from the DMZ, and they would be used to strike deep into South Korean territory, targeting larger military installations such as airfields, bases, barracks, and things like that, and inflict mass casualties while causing confusion. They're generally not as precise as traditional projectile-based artillery. However, there are some smart MLRS systems out there, and this very well could be one of them. But again, it's so early on, we don't know yet. But it appears that these contain multiple large diameter rockets that are likely capable of flying very far, very deep into South Korean territory and dishing out a large amount of damage. It should be noted actually that they're unveiling several different types of artillery systems here, but they all seem to be the same rocket-based artillery. Again, they could be guided, they could be unguided, but these are all newer systems that have larger diameter warheads than any of the previous MLRS systems that we've seen before. And again, will likely be used to strike deep into South Korean territory, striking various military targets, causing, again, mass confusion as well as mass destruction. So here it appears we have a new vehicle that is, these are anti-ship batteries. What they do is these are carriers that carry the Kumsong-3, which is the North Korean variant of the Russian KH-35 subsonic anti-ship missile. These were tested a couple years ago. We have seen these before. These were tested back in 2018 in response to Donald Trump deploying United States Navy carrier assets to the Korean Peninsula. So we've seen these before. However, these do appear to be new carriers, as well as they seem to be carrying 8 Kumsong-3 missiles, whereas previous systems carried 4. So definitely getting more bang for your buck per vehicle. Coming up here is one of our main events. We see the Pukguksong-4 submarine-launched ballistic missile. This missile is an upgrade of the previous Pukguksong-2 and Pukguksong-3 that we saw tested out of the Sinpo or the Gore class submarines a couple years back. It is known that North Korea is not only working on upgrading the Pukguksong missile, but it is also working on constructing a much larger submarine than the Sinpo class, which carried the earlier variants of these missiles. As it stands, the Gore-class submarine can only carry one ICBM, so it's likely that this upcoming submarine is going to be able to carry multiple. So as we see, this missile itself is larger in diameter than the Pukguksong 2 and 3, so it's likely that North Korea is continuing to build up not only just its nuclear deterrent, but to build up a significant second strike capability to where there would be no way for a preemptive attack to destroy all of North Korea's nuclear capabilities before they were able to retaliate. So the Pukguksong 4 represents a significant achievement as far as North Korea's nuclear deterrence is concerned. Now up next, we see what looks to be the North Korean version of the Tor missile system. Tor is a Russian short-range missile system that's meant to defend military assets as well as other installations from munitions such as cruise missiles, glide bombs, unmanned aerial vehicles, as well as low-flying fixed aircraft, as well as helicopters. The Tor missile system is a very capable system, and it performs well in testing. North Korea choosing to procure this type of weapon seems to indicate that they are trying their best to upgrade their missile defense systems, as it's well known that North Korea's missile systems are very outdated. They're still employing systems like the S-200 as well as the S-75. So should this work as well as its Russian counterpart, this would be a significant boost to North Korea's defensive capabilities. Up next, we have a system that we've seen before, but it's still relatively new. These are what are known as KN-06. They are basically the North Korean versions of the Russian S-300 system. They are a long-range anti-aircraft and, to a limited sense, an anti-ballistic missile system. They are cold-launched, meaning that they are launched via compressed gas before the motor ignites, meaning that they can fire in any direction. Very capable system, performs well in tests. The S-300 has never been used in an actual combat scenario. However, all indications seem to point that the S-300, and by extension the KN-06, will be a very capable system. And again, this is an effort by the North Koreans to bolster their surface-to-air missile systems, because North Korea undoubtedly knows that their own air force is going to be mauled on the very first days of the conflict, and so having a sophisticated as well as a dense air defense system is crucial for them to stay alive. Here we have what appears to be a new series of short-range ballistic missiles. Not too much I can tell you on these because the information is pretty scarce, even by North Korean standards. However, one author theorizes that these might be used to fly low, perhaps under the radars of South Korean and American forces in order to strike at military installations within South Korea. What can be said for sure is that these definitely look to be a step above the traditional Scud missiles that North Korea relied on for so long, likely a lot more accurate and a lot more reliable. And for the grand finale, of course, we have the brand new ICBM, the Hwasong-16. This ICBM is notable in that it is actually the largest ICBM in the world. Larger in diameter than any previous North Korean rocket, the warhead is enormous and is likely capable of containing several re-entry vehicles as well as decoys. This is apparently a liquid fuel ICBM, and it's very notable because North Koreans, they're using a mobile TEL launcher for a liquid fuel ICBM, which is unusual. Most countries would use a static launching silo for something like that. As stated before, this is estimated to have a much larger payload than the preceding Hwasong-15. I'm probably willing to bet that this has a much larger range as well. I'm sure this is a tried and true ICBM that could conceivably hit any place in the world, realistically. I was attending a webinar run by NorthKoreanNews.org for pro members, and they had Landkoff and a couple others on there, and they were talking about that this was the first time that we've seen more than 6 TEL transporter vehicles in a military parade. And the reason that they had 6 TEL transporters to begin with was because that they had illegally acquired them from China, who had circumvented the arms embargo by describing the TELs not as TEL launchers, but as logging vehicles. So that's how North Korea was able to get those TEL launchers. But now we're seeing more than 6 at this military parade. So it's theorized that either China has illegally shipped more of these TEL vehicles to North Korea, or that North Korea is now producing them indigenously. From what we know, the Hwasong 16 has yet to be tested. However, given North Korea's affinity for flaunting its ballistic missile capability, it is likely that we will see it tested, perhaps not soon, but if the incoming American administration resumes the status quo of hostility towards the DPRK, it's likely that we will see the Hwasong 16 tested in order to send a message to the incoming administration. A very impressive system nonetheless. Again, it is the largest ICBM in service anywhere in the world, significantly larger than anything the North Koreans have ever produced before. And this is likely a very, very devastating weapon, and it sends a clear and unequivocal message to the outside world that North Korea is a nuclear power, whether you like it or not. So there's a lot that can be said about all of these new military machines. Some people have theorized that these machines are mock-ups. I personally don't believe that they're mock-ups. Every time a mainstream media has said, these missiles are mock-ups, they don't really work, they end up being tested and they work just fine. All of the military hardware that they've demonstrated here I believe to be authentic, which naturally, of course, raises the question, how much of these weapons can North Korea realistically produce? That is one of the many unknowns. We know that North Korea is still struggling economically. However, I personally believe that Kim Jong-un is trying to compensate for his lack of industrial capacity, and instead of maintaining this large million-man army, he's probably aiming to trim down the armed forces significantly into a smaller but better equipped and more capable army that is in many ways more efficient than the parasitic army that preceded it, so to speak. So whether or not North Korea can produce a sizable number of these vehicles, I think is irrelevant, because again, the main focus of this parade is North Korea's ballistic missiles, and more specifically their nuclear missiles. So the point of this parade, again, I think is not just to solidify his rule within his own country, but also to send a message to the world that your sanctions have failed, we're here, we have nuclear weapons, they're not going anywhere, let's negotiate. Because even though we have these nuclear weapons, we've stated over and over again that these are entirely for defensive purposes only. We're not going to launch a preemptive nuclear strike at South Korea. We're not going to launch a preemptive nuclear strike at the United States or Japan. So we are a nuclear power. We have chosen this path because we've seen what has happened to countries that could not pursue nuclear weapons in time. We've seen what you've done in Iraq. We've seen what you've done in Afghanistan and Libya. We've seen what you're trying to do in Iran. We're not going to let that happen here. And so we've produced nuclear weapons. You've tried to stop us. You've failed. We're not looking to start a war. Let's negotiate. That, to me, is what I get from this military parade. So anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this video. I'm really eager to hear what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment below. I look forward to engaging in some friendly discourse with you all. So yeah, this is Jesse from North Korean Movie Reviews. I hope you all have a great day. And don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more content regarding North Korea. Have a good one.